Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Ptp After Dark. Well, we got Oil Man. What's going on, Mr. Oil Man? How you doing? And Smokey Randy. It's the Jews. What can I do? What can I do? I can't do anything. You know what I'm saying? It happens. What can you do? Anybody else who's on the YouTube, the D Live, or the X, welcome to you. Thank you for being here. And of course, anybody who's over on Pilled that I haven't seen yet, welcome. So, it's the Jews. No, it's not the Jews. Hold on. Gotta lower that just a tiny bit there. Impeach them all. Ved more. How you doing? Thank you for the blessings. Yeah, I can use all the blessings and the prayers. I can get, so I appreciate it. For the first time in the last couple of months, I have heard some not so good news from one of my doctors. Is that Trick Pony? How you doing, Trick Pony? He finally got back to Mrs. PTP about what's going on with my skeleton, and it's not that great. So we'll be going to see a doctor on Tuesday to take a blood test to figure out why it's getting worse instead of getting better. And I'm also going to, get a second opinion on my voice. So, Timberjet, how you doing? Eagle Freedom, good evening. So, no worries about anything. Just have to take a different approach. Maybe something stronger. I don't know. We'll figure it out. So, just keep up the prayers. Like I said, I can use them. So today, we were going to fact finder. What's going on? I said I was going to come on tonight if we can find some stuff about reaction to Kamala Harris's plan, and we did. I found reaction from Fox News and MSNBC. But something horrendously funny. I was gonna play her whole speech, but it was a half hour long. And I was like, nah, I won't do that. But I listened to it, and it made absolutely no sense whatsoever. But she had nobody there. There was about 100 people, maybe less, behind her. And there was about 140 people total in this little gymnasium. The rest were, now listen to this, the rest of the people there were her staff, Secret Service, the catering company, because she had lunch catered by a barbecue place that was local to some place, wherever she was. I have no fucking idea, and I don't care. But she had to have lunch catered by some barbecue place, supposedly, and there was about 25 people there that were just catering staff. So she had to buy lunch for people to show up to hold signs. What's up, Salty Nuts? So, what happened to the 15,000 people, the 10,000 people in the last 2 rallies she did. Did we say that those images were faked? Yes, we fucking did. We said that. Is it true that Kamala Harris, the prodigy of the globe, was lying to us the whole time? Where she has to come out with her first set, what's up, Spaz? Her first set of policies, and there was only 100 people there. The rest were staff and a catering company. But we're going to listen to Fox News and MSNBC about what they thought on her plans. But first, who else is here? Band Mom. Welcome, welcome. Mr. Spaz, how are you? I hope everything's well. Let's see if I missed anybody. Nope. Okay. Yeah, no, Timberjet. Apparently, it was barbecue. Some sort of barbecue. She actually mentioned it, said thank you to the company in the beginning of her speech when she first walked in, cackling. So, hey, I'm just going by what I see. So, but first, before we get there, I want to watch this clip. And to tell you the honest to God's truth, I don't know why this scumbag pedophile even is allowed on the fucking internet. I showed a clip from him once before, but I'm going to pause it as soon as I started so you know who it is.
Garbage like Trump thinks that black people are inferior.
Here's what I'm going to ask.
This fucking guy went to prison for trying to hook up with 13 and 14-year-old girls. Went to fucking prison. He's a pedophile, legally. Why is he allowed anywhere near a microphone and the internet? I don't fucking get it. So here he is talking about how bad Trump is to Kamala Harris. A pedophile. A legitimate, convicted pedophile.
Well, I'm going to answer. Because in the course of his rambling press conference on Thursday, he did this thing that says that she's dumb. She keeps saying she's dumb.
And?
She's dumb. She's dumb. And she said that she was chosen.
And I use the word empty suit. What's the difference?
Exactly.
What's the difference?
And because he also said in the course of this press conference.
Notice you're not answering what's the difference?
I'm doing it.
I said empty suit. He said dumb. What's the difference?
Because he did in the context of her race.
You see, typical fucking liberal piece of shit. He didn't do it in the context of her race. I watched the whole fucking thing. Race never even came up. But once a scumbag, convicted, pedophile, liberal, rainbow dildo shoving piece of shit, always a scumbag, pedophile, convicted, child molester, dildo shoving piece of shit. There should be some sort of petition to get this scumbag off the fucking air before he starts raping little fucking girls.
He do it in the context of her race.
In that same rambling answer, he talked about her being chosen because she pretends to be this or pretends to be that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you think Anthony Weiner's not a Jew? Of course he's a Jew.
Implying that somehow being black and being South Asian means you can't also be smart.
No, being black And being South Asian has nothing to do with being stupid. I know plenty of black people, and I know plenty of Asian people. I know Jamaican people. And they're pretty fucking smart. This broad's a moron. I'm sorry, but I watched a podcast or a live stream. I don't call them podcasts on TikTok. They're live streams because people don't understand what a podcast is. They just get on there and fucking talk. What's up, Major Adams? How you doing? And she was saying, well, Kamala has to be smart. She's a lawyer. Really? Because she failed the bar the first time she took it. So obviously, she wasn't that aloof to being book smarts. She hooked up with Willie Brown, who advanced her career with no education. And then everything from there progressed with California because Willie Brown was a big influence here. So don't tell me that she's not stupid because she did what you're not supposed to do if you're a feminist, is fuck your way to the top. And that's what she did, whether you like to say that or not. Anyway, hold on a second. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. PNW Sasquatch, thank you for the tip. And I saw somebody. P-Quest, thank you for the cookie tip. Pencil Tunky. That's right. That motherfucker should be in prison. He should be in prison. Quiltanon, thank you for the cookie tip. Once again, tips are tax-free. Even the retard Kamala agrees on that. And we all know Kamala never took just a tip. Okay? Just a tip. Feel free to tip as much as you want. It's all tax-free. Anyway, thank you. So, Anthony Weiner should be the last person to make any comments about any fucking thing, anywhere, any place, or any time. Especially about Donald Trump or anybody. He should not even be allowed near the internet, being a convicted fucking pedophile. Who knows what him and his big fucking hook nose are looking for in the disguise of a podcast. Whatever. So fuck him and everybody who looks like him. Okay. I hope it's not a wiener tip. No way. Okay, let's get to the first segment from Fox News. Janine Pirro analyzing cum guzzlers thing that she did. It's pretty good. So buckle up. Oil Man. I see a very good breakfast for you tomorrow. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Probably be, oh yeah, tomorrow's Saturday. That's right. Holy shit, tomorrow's Saturday. Fuck. Holy shit. Patriot Party Podcast coming in with the raid. God, Anthony Weiner's got my throat all fucked up. Thank you, Mick and V-Lin, for the raid. Appreciate that. And everybody from there, from Patriot Party Podcast, welcome in. Let's get cracking with Judge Janine.
Kamala the Comrade, Vice President Harris rolling out an economic plan
Fucking
that would make
Saturday.
Stalin smile by pushing price controls and masking it as a corporate price gouging ban. But we've seen this movie before, and it always ends in disaster. Just ask the Soviet Union. Price controls led to the massive shortages of food and essentials. Here's the vice president.
Our country has come a long way since President Biden and I took office. Many Americans don't yet feel that progress in their daily lives. Costs are still too high. As president, I will take on the high costs that matter most to most Americans, like the cost of food.
And like I said this morning, who is that? Who is that? Tammy, thank you for the cookie tip. Life of Brian, thank you for the shades tip. Appreciate that. Like I said this morning, this bitch doesn't understand that the government cannot regulate private business. That's why they're calling her Comrade Kamala. But I guess if you keep talking the propaganda and keep talking it long enough, your low information, low Q dipshits and dumbasses will realize it.
A loaf of bread costs 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%. I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
And God forbid that they price gauge. We don't want price gauging going on in this country. She can't even read off a teleprompter. Price gauging. Congratulations. You're a retard.
And if that didn't satisfy her communist cravings, Kamala is also proposing giving first-time home buyers up to $25,000, aka your hard-earned money, so that they can buy a house.
Make sure you lock your
While we work on the housing shortage, my administration will provide
Just
first-time
walk.
home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home. We can do this. We can do this.
Pennsylvania, what was that, a fleet? Oh, thank you so much. What a nice compliment. She says I'm one of the greats. That's so nice. Thank you so much for that. You know, I kind of base my style off of Rush Limbaugh, but a little bit more vulgar. So that was very nice. Thank you so much. And thank you for the fleet tip.
All to help more Americans
Thank you, Foxy Lady.
experience the pride of home ownership and the financial security.
And not for nothing, but when she said that, the pride of home ownership, Patriot Party podcast with a ship. Oops, that's a can. That's a ship. What up, fuckers? What's going on? That's gotta be Mick. The first thing that I thought about when she said the pride of home ownership was how fast can they sell that house that we financed to BlackRock, Vanguard, or State Street so they can then rent it out for 4 times the mortgage amount. That's the first thing I thought of. You outie?
Yeah, love you.
Okay, love you. Be careful.
I'll be back later.
Text me when you get home.
Okay.
All right?
That it represents and brings.
Classical
So
chick.
that's my plan.
But you know you've crossed the line when the liberal Washington Post calls you a commie. Check out this headline they wrote. It says, quote, when your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls. And even CNN's calling it a gimmick.
First of all, nobody can explain what price gouging means. You've seen this kind of thing tried in lots of other countries before: Venezuela, Argentina, the Soviet Union, etc.
Now, I said that this morning on my show this morning, and now CNN is saying it 7 hours later. We've seen that happen. Venezuela, Vietnam, Vietnam, Cambodia, all these communist and socialist countries, and not one of it has worked at all. Wow, I can actually say I agree with CNN.
Leads to shortages, it leads to black markets. The specific way this bill is written might actually increase prices.
Reasonable people would ask, what does that mean? What does that really mean? And how is the government going to be involved in it? Is this just a ploy? Because it sounds kind of like it.
Yes.
All right, Joey, I'll start with you. Price gouging, it's some say, and I do, that it's a socialist attempt to put a cap or reduce prices, when in the end, it really is about supply and demand, and it's never worked in history.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how they love to use before the pandemic so that they can encompass the Trump years into where prices, interest rates, things have gone. But Trump can't say that. Trump can't say that, hey, in a regular world, I did really well for 2.5 years and the pandemic screwed up some things. He can't say that, but they can, because it puts some distance between them and their bad policies or the results of them. What's really funny to me is that the root cause czar, is that appropriate? Because she's not the border czar, but she may be the root cause czar. As the root cause czar, she's trying to fix the price of housing and the affordability of housing and the affordability of groceries on the back end, on the purchasing end, rather than what's causing these things to be expensive to begin with. You think Kamala Harris of all—
By the way, when they're calling her the border czar, saying that her job was to look at the root causes. Did we ever get a report from when she went to Guatemala and Honduras to find out what the root causes were of mass migration? Because I don't remember reading that report. I don't know about you guys. I don't remember. So we didn't get any information on what's the root causes. So once again, another lie and another failure.
All people who should have a doctorate in what root causes are. She's traveled everywhere but the border to find out what the root causes are of immigration. You think she would want to fix the root cause of the price of groceries? And let me tell you what it is. It's energy. I live in a place, I have more cows than people as neighbors. Everything around me is either growing food or growing animals to become food. Diesel costs so much they can't do it. I can't give the hay off my farm away because it costs too much money to come cut it, bale it, and take it wherever they want it to go. The price of food is up because the price of creating food is up, and that starts with—
And that's very simple economics. Economics 101. You learn that in high school. When I went to high school, I took economics all 4 years. It was one of my favorite classes. Oil Man, thank you for the cookie tips. Thank you. I took it all 4 years. I had a badass economics teacher. And I really learned about how the world works economically. And basically, everything comes down to two things: supply and demand, and how much pressure is put on either one of those, supply or demand. Man, Oil Man is blowing up the tip jar. Wow. Thank you so much. Fertilizer, right? Fertilizer is up. Everything that goes to building the machinery, the fuel, it's all exponentially more expensive. So of course, that's not going to be passed on to the producer. It's going to be passed on to the consumer. It's basic economics. Anybody who took an economics course would understand this. So she willingly knows being in politics for 4 years as the vice president and advisor to the current president that these things won't work. Period. Put it in the refrigerator. Okay, just put it down. All right. All right, bye. So she's basically lying in front of the 100 people that were there.
Energy. So if you want a root cause, look at energy.
You know, the interesting thing is, Martha, when she talks about $25,000, you know, isn't that great? Wouldn't that be great? I mean, forget about the fact that those homes are going to cost $25,000 more. But she is part of the economy that created the inflation, and she wants you to believe that she's the one who's going to solve it.
Yeah, so after the pandemic, there were $2.5 trillion
I like that name, P.O.
jammed into the U.S. economy. And there was money flooding everywhere. And we all don't forget about the billions that were wasted, the billions that were sent to companies in some cases that didn't exist. So we don't hear anything about, you know, how to work down the excesses of all that money that flooded into the economy, because that's where you got 20% increases in everything from milk to bread to cars to energy. So that's why we have this huge inflationary force in the country. It is not because there are big corporations who can't unfairly, she doesn't want them to unfairly exploit consumers and run up excessive corporate profits. These food companies have like a 1.9% profit margin.
I was just going to say that. It's actually around the 1.2% profit margin. I double checked that from this morning when we showed it this morning. Oil Man, thank you for the ship. The ship tip. It's a ship tip. Thank you. So corporate profit margins are very narrow. It's not price gauging anybody. Bigger corporations have larger overheads. Smaller corporations have lower overheads. I talked about Albertsons compared to grocery outlet. Grocery outlet doesn't have all the advertising and thousands of stores across the country. So their overhead is lower, their prices can be lower. But bigger companies with more overhead, higher prices, supply and demand. It's really simple. Really simple.
They know there's a lot of pressure on a food company not to raise prices, right? Because they don't want to get cut out by the competitor, and they don't want to price themselves out of what people can buy at the grocery store. The only time they raise prices is when their suppliers start creeping up their prices, and eventually they have to raise their prices. But these are not highly profitable companies that she's talking about. And I love the fact that they want the FTC to penalize corporations who violate the rules. We just had this big Supreme Court case, which you know better than any of us, the Chevron case, which basically said don't allow these agencies to become basically Big Brother, like a socialist government. So now the FTC is going to show up at your business and go, let me see your books. Like, why did you make so much money last year? I'm from the government.
PO'd only the tip. Exactly. But if you're going to give a big tip, make sure you lubricate it. That's all I'm asking.
And I'm here to tell you whether or not your price.
Oops.
Gouging. I mean, that is going to cause American businesses to shrink up, not want to be in business, not want to open a new business, not want to add a new location, not want to expand. And that's what we heard about today.
You know, some of this this so-called price gouging, I mean, the crazy part of it is that it's about supply and demand, Jessica, and Republican and Democrat economists agree that, you know, price gouging is something that generally doesn't end up very well. Yeah. But she was, and Kamala talks about her being the attorney general, and I prosecuted these cases. Why? And the reason she's alleging it, she wants a federal ban is because it's price gouging is all prosecuted by the states. Why didn't she call the individual attorneys general together and say, She's been there 3.5 years. Let's get together and deal with this price gouging. All of you, for each of your states, the White House will help you price gouge and find out who should be prosecuted. But no, she waits until now.
Absolutely.
Well, I
He'll
actually think
check.
that's a great idea. And I
Absolutely.
hope that Kamala is watching. We
Thank
have
you.
read that she likes the show, and I hope that she takes that advice. I think part of the reason that this is coming right now is actually twofold. So one, this is the Kamala Harris top of the ticket. This is something that's a priority for her. She had a markedly different tone in discussing these issues than President Biden did. I never heard President Biden acknowledge that bread is up 50%, for instance. She's obviously fashioning herself differently in that way. The second part of this is it was just in March that the FTC report, it was called Feeding America in Time of Crisis, came out. And they actually identified the fact that companies like Walmart, like Kroger, like Tyson were reaping profits so far above the supply chain problems that they had to call it out. And that's what led to this policy coming in.
Like Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, who reaped massive benefits from oil man with the cookie tips. Thank you. Thank you. That reaped billions and billions of dollars taking advantage of the American taxpayers during COVID. What about that kind of price gouging? Oh, your vaccine is free, but Pfizer made $80 billion profit off the vaccine. What do you think we are, fucking stupid?
To being. So that's what she's going from. And I would also say
Thank you, Oil
that
Man.
you could look at this as antitrust enforcement rather than price controls. And she hasn't been specific about that difference. And if it is antitrust enforcement, that's something that's very in line with who Kamala Harris is and who she has been throughout her career.
Take it easy, Timberjack.
Net, I think that this was an incredibly good day for Kamala. She was able to introduce herself to the American public in a way that she hadn't before. And you take the contrast of yesterday. So you had President Trump, someone who grew up a millionaire, became a billionaire, standing in front of his golf club, ranting and raving about everything, lying about everything from, GDP rates to poverty rates to energy production, et cetera. And then you have Kamala Harris, someone who's talking about her middle-class upbringing, the fact that her family rented throughout their lives, so she knows what it means for people out there who can't get on the property ladder, someone who worked at McDonald's through college. You couldn't have the starker juxtaposition between these two candidates. And then on top of it, she's saying to people, I feel your pain. I know how much things cost.
Do you know that Kamala Harris lives in a $7 million house in Brentwood? $7 million house in Brentwood. Everything that she talked about her growing up was a lie. You know how we know that? Her father told us. With the busing and all that bullshit, and all of her relatives smoking weed in Jamaica. Everything she says is a fucking lie. Everything that Donald Trump says is a fucking lie. Who cares? Who cares? But we know for a fact that when Donald Trump wasn't in the office, I had a business. As soon as Joe Biden got in the office, 7 months afterwards, I had to shut my business down. That's all I know. And that's all I care about. So, fuck you.
You know what I want to do? I want to build 3 million new housing units. You know what I want to do? I want to cap prescription
I'm
drug
just
prices for everyone, not just Medicare recipients. I mean, yesterday, we didn't get to talk about it because of the Trump press conference, but because Medicare is negotiating drug prices, seniors will get to keep $6 billion of their dollars. That's $1.5 billion in out-of-pocket costs that will be saved because of the policies from the Biden-Harris administration.
Those policies that they're talking about were Trump policies in 2017. 7 years ago. That's where they got those policies. This Jessica Tarloff is one of the most disingenuous dildo writers I've ever seen. when we talk about people who do shit to get paid, this is it right here. I don't know if Dildo Rider needs to be beeped, but I'll beep it anyway. Hold on. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie tips. And welcome. All right, let me continue.
And that's what today is about regular people getting to keep more of their money.
Greg,
So, I got to say this. I want to just say this. Let's take one example. My daughter just brought me in a half a gallon of milk. Okay? Put it in my little studio refrigerator because I use it for my coffee. Sometimes my cereal in the morning when I'm doing research. What happens if the government, right, if Cum Guzzler says we're regulating every gallon of milk, no matter what it is, what the brand is, what anything is, can't go higher than $4. No matter what. So places like Walmart and Albertsons, Kroger's, every grocery store, you can't sell milk for more than $4 a gallon. That's $2 a half a gallon and $1.25 a quart. How long before stores stop selling milk? Because the companies that make the milk are not making a profit. How long before all the prices that are set by the federal government, all those products cease to exist? Because the price of fuel and machinery and labor and everything goes up except for the product. Think about that. That's the government in control of everything, including the supply and the demand. That's what Kamala Harris is telling you.
Trust enforcement that Jessica talks about is
Simple
really
economics.
the issue. If we're talking about many different
Thank you,
supermarkets,
Sean
many
Joe.
different meat markets, competition is the essence of capitalism. We're not dealing with a monopoly.
Well, first, I want to point out something Jessica said, that Trump began as a millionaire and now he's a billionaire. I think that makes him an expert in this. I would rather listen to somebody who began as a millionaire and is now a billionaire than somebody who doesn't have a damn clue about economics. I've never heard a candidate today more unsure of themselves on a topic than Kamala Harris. I think she's been burdened by the weight of expectations put on her by the media. I've never seen a better campaign ad for Trump. She's campaigning better for Trump than Trump is. First, let's...
Now, before he finishes, remember when we said this is not going to last? That the honeymoon for Harris last week, we said next week was going to be over. It's only Friday. The honeymoon is over. This is the first policy that she's come out with, and it's failed in the left-wing mainstream media. It's failed. Think about how the rest of the 90 days are going to go. Who is that? Hill Jack, thank you for the cookie. Thank you so much. You say such nice things.
Talk about the down payment issue on the house. A lot of this stuff is infuriating because they're treating the American public like idiots. She makes a proposal that is only half an equation. The first half is, here's a nice thing for you. The second half is missing, who pays for it? You saw this with student loan theft, described as forgiveness. Who paid for it? You paid for it. You see with immigration policy, who's footing the billions and all that free stuff? You're paying for it. Nothing is free. Nothing is free. And the sooner or later you figure that out, the better off you're going to be. And that's directed...
That sounds really good. Biscuits and gravy sound really good. I would not mind that.
Democrats who don't understand that these policies are going to sink this country. You know, if you cap prices, you increase scarcity by diminishing competition. People can call her a communist, but you gotta explain this because the media won't ask the follow-up questions. How do you plan on doing this? Please give me an example. Give me an example where industries got together in a room and decided to drastically increase prices. That doesn't exist. The only example they'll have is, a bodega raised prices on umbrellas when it rained. That's all they got. There is no payoff for industries to artificially inflate their prices because the people who drive the prices are the consumers.
Thank you.
That is, if you want to understand supply and demand.
That was my whole point about the story with the milk. The supply and demand. If the people who are in control of the supply meet the expectations of the people who demand, prices even out. If you throw a third party in there, like the US government, then shit goes sideways very quickly. And he's explaining it a lot more eloquently than I did.
And it's the consumers who drive the prices. There is absolutely no debate on this. There is not a single economist who would agree that this is the right thing to do. We can go and talk about Eastern Bloc countries. You can look at the cheap, terrible cars that they made and the appliances they made, but you already know that story. So how do you keep a debate alive if we know this is a fraudulent idea? You don't talk to economists. You listen to politicians or talking heads like me who have to do the research because I'm sick and tired of hearing people pretend like they know what they're talking about on TV, but they don't. So you won't see economists on other shows, other networks asking these questions. Like, can you give me an example of how this is done? What are the major industries? What is the right price? What is too high? What is too low? Can the government set prices based on not having a knowledge of an industry? What do you mean exactly by price gouging? How is that done beyond unique exceptions? Price gouging is a weak phrase directed at weaker minds.
Can I just add?
Bravo. Go ahead. Kamala has no time to answer pesky questions about her radical record because she's too busy grilling Tim Walz about his white guy tacos.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox.
He said it. Greg, whatever his name is, Gutfeld. I couldn't have said it any better. That's why I let him speak. Just because, and you've seen this with the squad members, just because you get elected doesn't mean you know what the fuck you're doing. Look at AOC. How she's still a congressperson is beyond me. It just goes to show you what New York has turned into. A bunch of fucking hipsters who don't know their ass from their elbow. Simple as that. Now, that which you watched on the 5 there was the reality of what Kamala Harris's plan is. That's her reality. That's what she wants you to know she wants to implement. Does anybody think that the implementation is going to work? You think you can use the antitrust laws to force socialism, government-run private business? You think you can do that? I'd like to see it. I would like to see it. The only reason why I'm going to all these doctors and all this stuff to stay alive is because this is the best time to be alive in this country. We're seeing things in this country like our parents and great-grandparents saw in World War I, World War II, living through history. People 200 years from now are going to read about this time. Remember when the Greeks would say, I lived in the times of Achilles. Those were great times. That's these times. And I'm going to do everything I can to stay alive so I can say,
I told you so.
Just so I can rub it in their faces. All right. So let me thank everybody, if I missed anybody, for all the tips, even the big tips. They felt real good. Coming into the chat, I appreciate all of that. Anybody over on the YouTube, welcome to you guys. Everybody from Patriot Party Podcast who came in with the raid. If I missed anybody, thank you guys. Now we're going to see MSNBC's point of view and see how starkly a contrast they have to feed to their low information, low IQ voters. So here, let's get cracking.
Professor of Economics and Public Policy Justin Wolfers joins us, Cook Political Report Senior Editor and Elections Analyst Dave Wasserman, and National Affairs Correspondent at The Nation, John Nichols. John, I want to bring you in. Who do you believe she was speaking to today? Does it go beyond Raleigh, North Carolina?
Oh, she's speaking to people all across the country. And I was very interested in the conversation you just had with some other very wise folks, where they were talking about.
I know you're not talking about Ron Insana and Doug High.
I totally am. But what I'm saying is they were talking about comparing Harris to Biden, right? Looking for those small areas of difference, or maybe even some bigger areas of difference. I would tell you right now, as I travel around the country, and I just did a 5-state drive through the upper Midwest, people aren't talking that way. They're talking about Harris versus Trump. And what they're hearing from Trump is a very confused, very, kind of throw something at the wall today, so throw something else tomorrow. A lot of talk about immigration, a lot of talk about all sorts of other stuff. Harris was laser focused on economics. Obviously, this was her economic speech.
And I'm sorry, this is an economist saying that Harris was focused on economics. And the only reason why an economist is saying that is because MSNBC is paying him to say that. No economist in his right mind would agree with any of those policies that she talked about today. Y'all can do the research yourself. Go online and look at what economists are saying off mainstream media about this shit. This guy is getting paid to say what he's saying. Keep that in mind.
But if she keeps on this is something that an awfully lot of Americans connect to. And I'll focus in on just one quick element of it. That notion of having a job that pays a living wage, right? That you can actually, get by on. I noticed today, just this afternoon, as the speech was on, the United Auto Workers Union and other unions were live tweeting the vice president's speech. So they were amplifying it out to their members.
Of course they were.
That hasn't happened much in recent years.
Once again, the federal minimum wage, $7.25 an hour. It hasn't been raised, I think, since the 90s. Oops, hold on. Hold the phone. His poor mom, huh? Jack, you're right. You're correct. No small business owner likes what the hooker is pitching. Thank you for the ship tip. That's a good one. Oh God, I forgot what I was gonna say. It'll come back to me.
It's a very, very good sign that Harris is making connection with the people that she needs to be connected with. And the last thing I'll say is,
I'm sorry, the federal minimum wage. Okay? I'd like to know who for the federal government makes $7.25 an hour. Who contracted to the government makes $7.25 an hour. Anybody that works at the VA. I was subcontracted to the VA 15 years ago. 15 years ago. Yeah, right around, maybe 14 years ago. I worked at the Long Beach VA as a subcontractor in the maintenance department for 2 years until I quit. I was getting paid $27.50 an hour, $27.54 an hour 14 years ago. I wasn't getting paid minimum wage. I'm not a vet. I'm not a veteran. The veterans were getting paid $40 and $50 an hour who worked there. I got half. The states make their own wages. In California, if you work at a fast food restaurant, you make $21 an hour. So this economist talking about raising the minimum wage, and this really hits with people. It doesn't hit with anybody. Especially the unions. Remember the fight for 15? Fight for 15. Fucking, why don't you fight for 50? Because it was a failure.
That reference to housing is a huge deal, not merely for people who are looking for a house. It is a huge deal for parents and for grandparents who are, looking at whether their family can stay in the same place, whether their kids can buy a house in the same town where they live.
How are they going to buy a house in the same town when one of her proposals is the capital gains tax? She wants to make a federal capital gains tax, where if I sell my house in California, I wouldn't only have to pay capital gains to Gavin fucking Newsom, I'd have to pay it to Kamala fucking Harris. Or if I die, my kids or my wife has to pay it. So what are you talking about? What's $25,000 supposed to do with a $900,000 house? Or $1 million house? Or a $2 million house? What sense does that make? Zero.
And so the more she burrows into some of these issues, these specifics, I think the more she connects with people at a very real level.
There's a lot of overlap, too. So if you can buy a house in the same town as your parents, your grandparents, you have help with childcare. You can have kids more easily. It eases the pain that you feel financially by having children. I mean, the single biggest cost in having a kid, beyond them eating blueberries, which I complain about a lot, obviously, is childcare. How much it costs to send them to daycare when they're little, how much it costs to have potentially help at home, how much it costs to feed them at school. It's expensive to get childcare in the.
So one of the best things you could have done was take away the earned income credit for children, to let that expire January 2021. That was the best thing you could have done, was let that expire. Because now it puts a huge burden on parents to pay for childcare. So her alternative is give you $25,000 to put down on a $750,000 shack so your parents can watch your kids. Am I hearing this shit correctly? Am I hearing this right? And this is really, The Economist is saying, this is really hitting the target people. What people is it? Is it the people in insane asylums? Oh wait, we don't even have those anymore.
This country. Can I ask you quickly, John, about the Teamsters? I know there's a lot of Teamsters leaders who are begging the union head to make an endorsement. What's going on with them?
There's a lot going on. Look, the head of the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, just the other day had a really stark critique of Donald Trump's appearance with Elon Musk, right? And where they were sort of joking about firing workers. And so the union actually had some very, very critical statements on social media about Trump. That's a big deal because I think they are starting to delineate there. The other thing is...
That's the unions running scared shitless because when Trump wins, all of that union bullshit is going to go right out the door. Because that's all it is bullshit. Exactly. Thank you for the cookie tip. Yeah, exactly, Pencil Tucky. Exactly.
The Black Caucus of the Teamsters, a very substantial portion of membership, just stepped out and endorsed Kamala Harris. Obviously, that doesn't speak for the whole union, but that speaks for a portion there. So I think there's a lot of movement here. The question, of course, is, when do you get Kamala Harris talking to the Teamsters leadership directly? When does she go to talk to them? When perhaps does the Teamsters leader come to this convention in Chicago and speak? We don't know where that stands yet, but I think that's the point.
So the Teamsters, let's talk about the auto workers, the truck drivers, right? The heavy equipment operators, so on and so forth. The Teamsters, who you, Kamala Harris, want to put out of business. Basically, out of business. Get an endorsement from the Teamsters. One of the biggest unions, the steel workers and the Teamsters and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Everything that these unions depend on has to do directly with fossil fuels. And I use that term jokingly because they're not dinosaurs. But it has to do with the fuel industry. Fracking, drilling, da-da-da-da-da-da. Go on and on and on. What are you going to get? The Teamsters to build fucking solar panels? And wind turbines? Is that what you're going to do? They'll endorse her because of this. Because of the money. And that's it. Not because of her policies, Mr. Economist.
Where the things could come together. And if I had to bet, what I would tell you is, I doubt very much the Teamsters will endorse Donald Trump. I think there is at least some evidence that they could endorse the Democrats. And so that's kind of where things stand now, whether there's an endorsement of the Democrats or whether the union decides to stand down. If they do endorse the Democratic ticket, well, that really kind of closes the circle on major labor unions and would be a huge deal for Harris and Biden, or Harris and Walz.
Justin, in
Harrison
looking at
Biden.
what she's proposing, obviously these are, this is her wish list. It's
Thanks
what
for the
she
cookie.
wants to do. There are a lot of constraints that will be surrounding her if she is president that include, the heavy lift of getting something through Congress, especially if Congress is not all within Democratic control. What do you see for what she just proposed as the most doable?
Yeah, good question.
I think there's probably a lot of energy around.
The question should have been, what do you see as being the most doable? He should have said, well, besides Madam Vice President, and then go on. But that's just me.
Trying to do something around housing. Her policy position there, we economists have warned for a long time, if house prices are too high, it's because there's too many buyers chasing too few houses. So giving more buyers more money doesn't help, but finding ways of creating more houses does.
I don't know if anybody's gone to the lumber yard lately, but a fucking 2x4 is real expensive. Lumber, although the prices come down, is still hella expensive. Steel studs are ridiculous. So the prices to build the houses are astronomical, not including the labor costs that you're paying even undocumented people to build these shitbox fucking houses. $25,000 is not even enough to get the floor poured in a 2-bedroom house. No less help somebody with a down payment. So you got to think about that when you're talking about these fucked up policies.
Actually remarkably close to a bipartisan position, maybe not bipartisan with Trump world, but certainly with conservative Republicans. And so that's something I think she can really pretty easily get done.
Are you Australian, Justin?
I am, mate.
I just want to make sure you're not from New Zealand. I
Oh,
don't want
geez,
to mix up a Kiwi
fucking
with an
Australian.
Aussie.
You also wouldn't want to invite me back if that were the case.
The question I have for you is, this is something that I only learned about when I was thinking about buying a house myself. And part of the reason why housing is so expensive in New York City is that there's retirement funds. The Australian Retirement Fund buys up properties here in New York City, buys up single-family homes. And I find that so interesting and so hard to wrap my mind around, that the priority is not for people living here, but rather we're not just fighting with each other for housing, we're fighting with a country that's buying up our properties for their retirement fund.
Spaz, being in the industry, you know as well as I've been out of the industry for 4 or 5 years now, but I was buying sheets of 1/2-inch OSB, oriented strand board, for $75, 4x8 sheets. Buying lumber now, $230 for that's ridiculous. Because the price of cutting the lumber, shipping it to the mills, milling it, shipping it to the lumber yards, all has to do with petroleum. And this administration wants to kill petroleum. So don't expect, if they get in, the prices to go any lower.
I'm not going to cop a whole lot of grief here around that, mate. Look, investors everywhere are interested in housing. Housing's a very important asset. And I'm actually going to defend it somewhat, which is it can be hard for a working class family to be able to get the down payment and get a new house built. If investors are going to be the ones who do it, then renting is an on-ramp into housing. Kamala Harris described in that speech how her own family had used rentals that way. You know, when these big investment funds are buying up housing, they're not leaving it empty.
And you know what? I hate to say this, but if you go to a Ford dealership and you look at, a nice F-150 or an F-250 or say a Raptor or something like that, you're looking at $100,000 truck. And you're going to put 10% down on your truck and make $1,500 a month payments. That's $25,000. You can't even buy half of a garage for $100,000. And what is $25,000 gonna do? Even if you put $25,000 with it, you're a fucking economist. Be real. Talk to the people for real. Wow, look at that crowd.
Renting it out, and they're renting it out to New Yorkers, and the number of places in New York doesn't change. In fact, investors can be a big part of the solution here, which is we need more houses. And if they were willing to build them, that's going to ease a lot of the constraints we currently face.
I'm sorry to target you with that just because of your accent, but I appreciate the answer. All right, so Dave, when we're looking at who she's speaking to, we've talked a lot about the general message. The poll.
Did she say when we're looking at who the hoochie is speaking to? Did she just fucking say that? Hold on a second. I gotta go back.
And if they were willing to build them, that's going to ease a lot of the constraints we currently face.
I'm sorry to target you with that just because of your accent, but I appreciate the answer. All right, so Dave, when we're looking at who she's speaking to, we've talked a lot about the general message.
I thought she said the
polling is suggesting right now that there's a big divide between women and men, that Donald Trump is making real inroads with men that maybe used to be a fan of the Democratic Party, and that Kamala Harris is just running up the numbers when it comes to women. Does a speech like this cut through the gender divide?
No.
Time will tell, but what we know is the reason why Donald Trump's been winning higher shares of Hispanic voters, black voters, and young voters than 4 years ago, at least in polling so far, has been a larger gender divide, where he's winning larger shares of men, basically around the side-by-side comparison of the economy. And when you look at the economic data, there's a lot positive for the...
I'm sorry. No mom who's working, trying to feed her kids with a husband that's working, or whoever, trying to pay their bills, this, that, and the other thing, can give a shit whether Kamala Harris is a man, a woman, a goat, a chicken, a hoochie, doesn't matter. All they care about is reality and how they're going to be able to afford to feed their kids. Stop with the fucking gender gap, man-woman bullshit. Because the only thing that Kamala Harris is appealing to are gay, transgendered, I shouldn't say gay, the transgendered, fucking retarded dildo sliders that are between 18 and 24 that she says are stupid, that we have to corral in dorms because they can't make good decisions. Those are the only people who she's appealing to. Stop throwing women into that category, because she's only appealing to the freak who can't discern their brain from propaganda.
Administration to point to, but what's really gotten in the way of more favorable views towards the economy is interest rates. And that's why I think, in addition to what Kamala Harris is saying, what the Fed does this fall is going to be pretty significant for how she's able to convince voters to stay the course and adopt her plan.
So you're saying that her whole economic fuckery depends on the Fed. So if the Fed decides to jack up interest rates, what happens then? Remember, cum guzzler and the kid sniffer have no say on interest rates from the Federal Reserve. So if the Fed comes in and decides to fuck everything up, What happens then? Sorry, Mrs. President, we can't lend you the $60 billion. We have to jack up interest rates. So you lied to everybody. What happens then?
It's similar populism to what we saw from Biden, but it's amazing what a difference a new messenger makes, because in our survey of battleground states, Trump only had a 6-point lead on cost of living and getting inflation under control. Joe Biden had a 20-point deficit.
There was no inflation under Trump. It was 1.6%. Fluctuated between 1.4 and 1.6 the entire time. At the peak of COVID in 2020, it was 1.6%. It only happened during the Biden administration. So get your fucking facts straight. Joe Biden didn't come into 9% inflation. He created it.
On that question in May.
That's huge. So part of what the argument you're making there, it seems to me, Dave, it's not so much about policy. It's more about personality. It's more about the packaging than it is about the actual policy.
Well, and also voters are suddenly curious about what Democrats have to offer because they have a new candidate. Voters were tuning Biden and his ads out. And her message in her ad of only working one job to get ahead, that resonates. But the other factor here, we've talked about housing costs, but healthcare costs as well. And Kamala Harris had a 13-point advantage on dealing with healthcare on this question. Obviously, Democrats are going to be pointing towards to Trump's plan to let Obamacare subsidies expire at the end of 2025. I'll be curious whether the Medicare rate or Medicaid Advantage rate cut that's supposed to go into effect in October has an effect on seniors' views towards the cost of healthcare.
Yeah. So think about this. It's been over 2 years since Biden said, we're going to cut costs for insulin. It doesn't go into effect until 2026 now. I said that this morning. Not September of 2025. It's January 2026. So all that bullshit, it hasn't even taken effect yet. So it doesn't matter if the policies work. According to these people, Kamala's not Donald Trump. The honeymoon is over. It's over. This was the first failure of a series of failures for Kamala Harris. Today is the 16th. Monday starts the convention. The 19th through the 21st is the convention. After that, it's going to be a series of failures. And I can't wait to talk about them. So that's all I got for tonight. I think we knocked it out of the park, showing the contrast between reality and rainbow dildoism. Because that's a thing. That's not just something that woke societies made up. Okay? Rainbow dildoism is an actual condition to where once you get that thing shoved up in you, you don't see anything else. But today, between this morning's show and tonight, we made stark contrasts between reality and fiction. And that's how I like to do it. So thank you, everybody on DLive, YouTube, and X. I appreciate all of you. Everybody over on Pilled. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you for all The tips, all tax-free. Mr. Oilman, thank you for the breakfast. Everybody else who tipped on the show, love you guys. Thank you so much. There you go. Wait, hold on a second. I think, yeah, it's a thing, Spaz. It is a thing. If I'm not mistaken. Oh, I thought I had one. Oh yeah, I do. Right there. So we'll give Scott from Woke Societies props on this rainbow dildo because it's a thing. Thank you, Spaz. Okay, so I want you all to do me a favor. Please, if you can. I am going to raid Boiling Point Live. So I would like you all to hang out when I end the show. Go over to Boiling Point Live. Give them a thumbs up. Tell them that the PTP Army is coming in hot. It's coming in fast. And it's coming in wet. Ugh. All right, guys. Hopefully, I will see everybody sometime tomorrow. Because I'm looking forward to biscuits and gravy. So it may not be in the morning. I don't know when. Go up to Boiling Point. Give them our love. I'll talk to everybody tomorrow. Bye-bye.